Well, for the first time, we have the entire four-person Grid Live Encore gang here with everybody tonight. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Grid Live Encore. I'm Ben Schneider. We welcome back Brandon Crossland after a week away. Casey Campbell joins us again. He'll be on later in the show to talk about the ARCA Series and the ARCA East Combo race in Milwaukee. And Joshua Burch is here, as always, to discuss Formula 2 and Formula 3 as well. Before we get into things, Casey, I want to apologize. I went back and watched last week's show. I introduced your podcast as the ARCA Racing Podcast. Got it slightly wrong. I know that's Colby Evans' show name. You have the ARCA Preview Show, so just want to clear that up. And I also said Grid Live Encore when I was introducing yesterday's show, just kind of went into autopilot. That, of course, was Grid Live Wrap-Up. This is Grid Live Encore, but we're going to forget all of that, move forward, and have a great show tonight. Gentlemen, how are you all doing?
I'm doing very well, yeah, and I love how we're matching a bit with colours here. We're every week we get in some organisation, and I love it, absolutely love it.
Don't worry, we didn't call each other and tell each other what to wear.
He's completely joking. We have this entire text grid where we just go. We plan this by the week exactly what colors we're going to wear. Don't let them fool you.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with you two. Look at that.
Yeah. Well,
I believe that they did it. They called each other and they told.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the orange I think is showing more red on the camera here, but it is still pretty close. So
this is Braves red over here. So
yeah. All right. Well, Casey, Brandon, we're going to see you a little bit later on here. In the meantime, Josh, I want to talk to you about an exciting race weekend in Belgium. Of course, Formula One was back. They actually had a race this time, which was nice to see. But we also had some F2 and F3 action as well. And we'll pull up the results here for you and start with the F3 race weekend. Oliver Behrman and Zane Maloney picked up the sprint and feature wins, respectively. It was each of their first victories in Formula 3. And in the F3 championship, the top four drivers are now separated by just 5 points. Top five drivers are separated by only 10 points. Young American Jack Crawford struggled this weekend, did not pick up a single point. He drops back to sixth in the standings, making his title hopes a bit of a long shot with just 2 race weekends to go. So, Josh, what stood out to you the most this weekend from F3? And of these title frontrunners, who do you think is most likely to walk away with the championship when it's all said and done?
Well, what stood out for me this week was definitely Oliver Behrman as well. He came in fourth in the standings as well. He was on 90 points and everyone else was on 100. He's come through now to be on 105. So he's moved from being around about 12 points back to being only 1 point behind the championship leader. So impressive weekend for him. First in the sprint race, third in the feature. But the biggest impressive thing for me from Formula 3 was the sprint race, because we had a massive accident between Zane Maloney and Oliver Goleth as well. What happened was, coming through Blanchimont, the two made contact, headed towards the barrier. Zane Maloney dug into the barrier, rotated over, then got sideswiped by Oliver Goleth. And if it wasn't for the halo, neither of them would have walked away from that one as well. So fantastic that the halo was there. Fantastic no one was injured as well. But for me, the biggest surprise was Zane Maloney bouncing back after that terrifying accident and winning the feature race. Can only happen in Formula 3. And to answer the last part of your question as well, who do I think is going to walk away with the title? Arthur Leclerc, who had a horrible weekend, but usually is very consistent. I think Arthur Leclerc could still walk away with it. 2 weekends left and 4 drivers in the fight of it. It's anybody's, but my money is personally on Arthur Leclerc.
Well, that would give the family one championship to be able to celebrate. I think Charles's F1 championship is kind of slipping away as Ferrari continue to mess up their strategy. They cost them another couple of points again this weekend, probably more than a couple points, but especially, you know what I'm talking about, was the final lap there and trying to go for the fastest lap in that battle with Alonso, still leaving everybody scratching their heads more than 24 hours later here. But if Arthur could hang on and take a Formula 3 title, you know, we know the Leclerc family certainly knows how to get around in these race cars, and he is certainly in a good position here. Just needs to capitalize on these next 2 race weekends to get the job done. Speaking of the support series, let's move on to F2. The sprint race podium consisted of Liam Lawson, Jack Doohan, and Ralph Boschung. Let's give a call to him. It's his first race back in quite a while, as he was still rehabbing that injury, and he comes away with a podium, so that's great to see. And then in the feature, Doohan took victory, followed by championship protagonist Felipe Drugovich and Lawson. So, Josh, Drugovich opened up his championship lead back again this weekend. Do you think he's going to be able to pull away and clinch this title before Abu Dhabi? And what else stood out to you from the F2 weekend?
For Djokovic as well, he's had a couple of weekends where he's been really down and really off. I mean, we've been saying all season as well that it should really be his championship. He's had such a grasp on it. So I'm glad to see him bounce back this weekend as well. I think he can pull away, maybe not at Zandvoort because it's too difficult of a track to overtake out. Monza looks more likely a circuit he can pull away and get a bigger gap because it's such a long break. Middle of September until the end of November. It's a huge gap in the standings in the season as well to do the 2 races. So I would be looking to wrap the title up in Monza, so you're not worried about it in Abu Dhabi. But the way it's set up, it probably will go down to Abu Dhabi. So that's going to be a lot of time thinking for him as well. And of course, if he does win the championship, he's not allowed to be in Formula 2 next year. So he wants to wrap up the F2 title in Monza and try and get a drive somewhere before next season so that he's not waiting until the end of November and not really having many options. That's the only problem with F2 finishing at the same time as F1 does. It kind of stagnates the driver market a little bit. And what else that stood out to me this weekend? Liam Lawson won the sprint and finished 3rd in the feature. Oliver Bearman in Formula 3 won the sprint and finished 3rd in the feature. That doesn't happen that often in the support series as well. Usually the reverse grids change that, so very impressive from both of them. F3 and F2, definitely more exciting than Formula 1 was over this weekend as well. We said we had a race this year in Belgium, and I had to correct. We had 12 laps of racing, 2 of which were really exciting. But as soon as Max Verstappen took the lead in lap 12 and then took the net lead on lap 15 as well, the race was over. Nothing really good happened after that. Very rare miss for Formula 1 in Belgium. But we move on to some more interesting circuits coming up, as like the returns of Singapore and Japan at Suzuka. What else stood out to me in the F2 weekend as well, which was Jack Doohan in the feature race had a really fantastic strategy. He pitted a lap before Djokovic. He took on a softer compound of tyre. He came out ahead of Djokovic. He got 3 seconds on those tyres, gap to him. And then he came up behind Cordial, who was yet to pit and was in 7th position as well. Now, Cordial blocked him at every single opportunity. Coming through Blanchimont, Cordial pushed Doohan onto the grass. And I was so annoyed with him because it just was not needed. Cordial was aggressively defending. And then what really got me was after Doohan had passed him, the 3-second gap that he'd created to Djokovic had evaporated. Djokovic was right there with him. Luckily, Doohan did manage to get the gap back up to 4 seconds before the end of the race. But Cordial was deliberately holding Doohan up. He was deliberately trying to force him off the track. And as soon as Doohan got past, and Djokovic was behind as well, Cordial, at the exit of the La Source hairpin, Cordial pulled over and let Djokovic through. Clear race fixing in my book from Cordial. And to be fair, I'm not expecting anything else. The driver's already been banned once this year for dangerous driving as well, like having the 12 penalty points. In my book, the FIA should investigate him for that because that is clear race fixing on his part. I don't know what his goal is, but I was disgusted, and I voiced that in the commentary from Cordial's behaviour there. He was interfering in the race. Yes, it was battling for position, but he was yet to pit. He was on very old tyres, and he was aggressively defending, and he clearly didn't do that to Djokovic, but he did to Doohan. So I wasn't happy at all there, and I don't think Doohan was too happy either. And there's a few people in the F2 paddock who was going, no, that's not correct. They're all shaking their heads. So that's really the rant that I've got this week about the F2. And it again goes to Cordial, just like he did when he caused the crash in Baku back in June. It's just, I don't see the talent. I don't see why he deserves to be this high up in the Formula Series. I really don't. But then again, we said the same about Raghunathan last year as well. But that's my rant, and that's what stood out to me in the F2 as well this weekend.
Well, you've got one fan here in chat. Our friend Seth leaves Late Night with Birch better than any late night American TV program. So, Josh, as always, we appreciate your perspective. And, of course, anytime there's question of race manipulation, I know that's certainly not going to go over well with a lot of people in the paddock. So that's certainly something to keep our eye on here.
And Ben, we were talking about me having my own show and a lot on here on Grid, and we were thinking about the names. I think we just found it. Late Night with Burch. That's the name of the show. That's what we need to call it. That type of show. I think that's perfect because it's always on late here as well. It's gone one. And what's that says? Nice orange shirt, Ben. Someone's football team in Tennessee.
Seth, I hope you're here at the start of a show. We were talking about how Brandon and I were wearing similar colors, and we'll bring Casey back in here in a moment as well. He and Josh are kind of in similar colors, but it's actually Waynesburg University. It's where I kind of got my start in this whole broadcasting and sports media journey. There's a video on my YouTube channel I just put up a couple of months ago if you want to go check that out. But I appreciate the compliments on the fashion there as well. And Josh, I know that your internet's going to cut out here at some point. I know it's very late for you over there. Obviously in the UK, they're doing some maintenance overnight.
Yeah.
So before we let you go, I want to give you the opportunity to give your one shining moment from this weekend.
I did say yesterday that I had an F2 and F3 moment, and it was indeed Zane Maloney in the F3 race as well, having a terrifying accident over 120 miles an hour at Blanchimont of all places, flipping upside down to get out the car, to have the car rebuilt overnight with spares from other teams as well, a true spirit there, and to go out and win the feature race. Pure brilliance. I'm so happy for Zane Maloney to put that behind him as well. And also, as I just want to say as well, Ben, I did notice that you had a purple shirt on yesterday as well, a purple polo shirt, I think they call them as well. I've got one identical. So for the other members here, I've got some. Maybe we should put those on and wear that on one occasion, because it's just happening again and again that we're wearing the same clothes. I mean, what was it, a couple of weeks ago? We all wore the same coloured T-shirt, and it wasn't it? Me, you, and Brandon wore the same one. So we just
next week is Purple Week.
Next week is
Mark
Purple
your calendar.
You guys are going to have to help me remember that though, because I'm going to forget. But see if we can coordinate there as well.
Purple.
One more comment from our own Adam Lemery's. Halo does its job again. Thankful for an open wheel racing. I hope that's something we can all agree on. The Halo has saved many, many injuries and arguably many lives as well since it's been introduced in all categories. And go ahead, Josh.
That's reminding me. I've heard things this weekend as well that for the 2026 regulations, Formula One are looking to introduce the aero screen alongside the Halo as well, like what we have in IndyCar. They've got the Halo as it is a standard FIA device, but they've put the aero screen around it. So I'm hearing a lot of rumors that the aero screen is coming in, but they're doing extensive more tests than what IndyCar are doing with it as well to make sure it could be ready. But the opinion is everyone's happy with the Halo, but they want to try this aero screen if it adds more safety to it. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and of course the Halo is very, very strong and it does its job very well. But I always think back to the instant with Massa with the spring coming through, and if you have the screen there in addition to the Halo like the IndyCars have, it reduces the chance of something happening in that instance as well. So we can never stop. We can never get complacent and stop, striving to continue to make improvements. I know Red Bull were trialing an aero screen when the Halo was first in development as well. So it can be done. IndyCar's proven it can be done. Hopefully Formula One can bring that into the regulations the next time they change. It sounds like around 2026. Well, Josh, thanks again. We'll go ahead and let you go and enjoy the rest of your, early morning here in the UK. And hopefully we will see you next week. I know we've got a busy weekend of coverage in Portland, so we're going to be excited gearing up for that.
Yeah, planning's already started as well. Getting all the graphics together. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'll get into bed and get my phone and watch the end of the show with you guys as well. So have a great one, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Josh.
See you, Josh.
All right, well, guys, let's move on and talk a little bit of ARCA here. And we're going to talk about a driver that we've been talking about quite a bit on the show this season. Sammy Smith picked up yet another win, his third of the ARCA Menard Series season and fourth of the East Series season. This was, of course, a combo race between the main tour and the ARCA Menard Series East. Now, Smith is all but guaranteed to defend his East Series championship from last year. He has only one ARCA finish outside of the top five in all the ARCA sanctioned races he's done this year, including the main tour. He also impressed many in the Xfinity Series of Watkins Glen a couple of weekends ago, finishing third behind the defending Cup Series champion Kyle Larson and the all-time winningest driver in the Xfinity Series on road courses, AJ Allmendinger. So if you're going to finish behind any two drivers, those are certainly two that you would want to be following and trying to pick up pointers from as you lead the entire rest of the pack. A very impressive performance from Sammy Smith in the second tier series in NASCAR. So Casey, we'll go to you first on this one. You look at Sammy Smith, I'm getting a lot of reminders of what Ty Gibbs was doing last year and a couple of years before that. Do you think he's on track to be able to emulate him by potentially, whether it's next year or 2024, skipping the Truck Series and just going straight into the Xfinity Series with Toyota and Gibbs?
Ooh, I think we're heading toward that direction, my friend. By the way, we didn't have any controversies after the ARCA race at Milwaukee, so yeah, that's good. If you remember all the stuff that happened last week, we don't need to go into that.
Oh yeah. That could be a whole other tangent. I think it's best we leave that in the past and move forward here.
Yeah, they've already gone on it on YouTube this week, so yeah, it's heading toward that direction. But when you look at the talent he has, it's similar. It's basically a Joe Gibbs car, but it's just KBM is in front of it and all that stuff. It basically, the transition was from there to here. It's basically just the same. Obviously he doesn't have as all the wins that Ty does, but yeah, he certainly has the talent that Ty does. And he's no matter where he goes, he's going to be a superstar in there. But the thing is, I have to wait to see what this Kyle Busch thing happens before we really put anyone's plans together. But yeah, it's looking like that's the plan that Sammy's on. I think maybe we could see Sammy running for an ARCA championship, but who knows?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring up the Kyle Busch deal needing to take place first. That's very important to this topic. Sammy Smith, he's done a lot of. Whenever I talk about Sammy Smith, I always talk about his super late model career and time doing all those things, and he's just really showing up in the same way that Ty Gibbs did. Didn't really get to see him do a lot at Daytona, having been taken out early, but had a really impressive finish there at Watkins Glen. It seems like they want to put him in the Xfinity Series as quickly as possible, and certainly he could if there would be a spot open for him. I think that's really the big obstacle at this point right now. But the Kyle Busch deal would definitely start turning things towards Sammy Smith's way. And also, he's not that old he's not that far after 18 years old yet. So let's keep that in mind as well.
Yeah.
And keep watching him blossom.
Yeah, we might want to see him run for a main ARCA Series championship first, and then go on in 2024, maybe to the Xfinity Series. I can see him doing that. Adam asks here in the chat, could you see Sammy Smith full-time in Xfinity within the next 3 to 5 years? I think absolutely. I think 3 to 5 that might actually be a little bit further out than we need to go.
Than you think, Adam.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's probably a matter of 2 to 3 if we want to be and like we said, he certainly is old enough now that he's 18 years old to be able to do that next season if he wants to, if the money's there and if everything logistically falls into place. But of course, Casey brings up an excellent point as well. Kyle Busch is still making headlines for not having anything to announce. He even had a mini press conference set this week at Daytona and said, I have an announcement. There is no announcement just yet. So that's very important to keep our eyes on, because it's important to remember the distinction. Of course, obviously, Casey, like you mentioned, it's essentially a Joe Gibbs car. They get a lot of equipment and support from Gibbs, but that car is now under the Kyle Busch Motorsports name this year, whereas when Ty drove it, it was under his grandfather, Joe Gibbs, and that race team. So a little bit of a distinction there to keep in mind. And of course, if Kyle Busch goes to Colleague or Richard Childress Racing, like has been rumored, you would have to think if he keeps Kyle Busch Motorsports around, it's probably going to be hard to see the clash with manufacturers there. It would maybe become a Chevrolet team as Kyle moves to a Chevrolet team in the Cup Series. So something to keep our eyes on as that deal continues to come together as well. What's Kyle Busch going to do in 2023? I think that could have major implications, not just for him, not just for the manufacturers, but all throughout the sport and throughout the different levels of racing as well. Now, speaking about different levels of racing, Casey, we've talked about this a couple of times on this show before, particularly earlier in the season with Brandon when we were having some East standalone races. We take a look at the ARCA East schedule. We have a 7-race schedule, which is significantly shorter than the West Series. And when you compare it to the West Series as well, They only have one combo race at Phoenix to start the season. The East Series has 3 to end their season. So there's really only 4 standalone East races on the schedule, and the combo races almost make up half of the schedule themselves. So I know you said there's nothing to worry about on the show last week. We don't have to worry about ARCA going anywhere or folding or anything like that. Those claims and rumors are ridiculous, have no merit to them. But when we talk about the East Series specifically, what do you think the current state is right now, in your opinion? Are they going to try to maybe merge the 2 series together if they can't get some more standalone races on the schedule, or are they going to look to try to bulk it up a little bit, go to some more tracks, and if they're planning that, how far are the developments on that front?
Well, there really isn't a lot of things going on. I can tell you that the East Series will be back next year as its full thing. What they want to do, and what ARCA has told me several times, and I know that Charlie Kroll has said it in several interviews that he's done with me, with countless others, that they know where they are with the East Series. They know it's not where it wants to be. It's just trying to get people to come out and race in that series. It's a different crowd than the West Series. It's going to take some time, but we've heard countless times that, actually so far the East car count has gone up this past year. So it's an improvement. Obviously, it's not where it wants to be. But are we going to see maybe some new venues? I've heard possibly some from some people that are in the know. So we'll just have to stay tuned to find out. But yeah, the East Series will be around next year. I just obviously I don't think ARCA would like it. I don't think ARCA likes where it's at right now. But it's obviously a constant improvement, and I think we're gonna see that.
And I have to say, I'm a biased local, of course, but there is a road course in New Jersey that I would like to see brought back to the schedule. But at the same time, I have to acknowledge that if it's going to be a standalone East race and you can only get 10 to 12 cars to come out there, some of whom are going to be and again, no disrespect at all, but your Brad Smiths and your fast tracks that aren't, front runners competing for the win. And how many competitive cars do you really have? You need to be able to put on a series that's worth watching and worth bringing fans out to the track for. And
Sure.
I certainly understand the business aspect of it as well. So we want to bring these tracks back. We want to bring the car counts up, but we have to make sure we have both things in place before we can do it right. And I think there's, obviously a lot of people working behind the scenes at ARCA to make that happen. And Casey, I know you're going to continue to keep us updated on that as we get closer to 2023. Sorry, what was that?
Will do.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, since we have, both of you here, I want to take the opportunity to talk about some major news that broke this week. We had no Truck Series action this weekend, but there was still major news as it pertains to the series. A few days ago, we received word that Camping World's replacement in terms of a title sponsor for the Truck Series is going to be a familiar name for the Truck Series. Craftsman is coming back starting next year in 2023. Of course, the tools and equipment brand had sponsored the series since its founding in 1995 through 2008. Marcus Lemonis' Camping World and Gander branding had been the sponsor since. But last month, Lemonis announced his sponsorship would be ending as he aimed to increase the salaries and benefits for his company's employees. So, Brandon, we'll go to you first on this one. What's your reaction to the news of Craftsman coming back for this Truck Series reunion?
When I first saw the logo, Ben, I thought it was like a fan art kind of thing. How all these different YouTube channels make their own custom series and whatnot. I thought it was just another one of those, and then I realized, oh wait, this is from an actual news source. This is actually happening. Oh boy. The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, it started it all. It's back, and but one thing that kind of concerns me though is that it's under different ownership from the last time that we had it. We're thankful for Marcus Lemonis and all the work he put into sponsoring the Truck Series and basically keeping it alive at times. But now we have Craftsman, which when it was last sponsoring the Truck Series, it was owned by Sears, who, before the recession was doing very well. Now it's owned by Stanley Black & Decker, and you can buy a lot of their products from Lowe's. And so Lowe's has had a lot to do with Craftsman in just the past few years, it seems. But the problem with Stanley Black & Decker owning Craftsman, I feel like they also own a lot of other brands as well. I think like brands that are just for their name's sake, they know they're going to be popular, so they acquire it. I just don't know what kind of money. Obviously, there's something good as far as nostalgia is concerned for having this as the title sponsor, but not really sure in maybe a 5-year, 10-year time frame how much the sponsorship is going to hold water for the Truck Series. Not kind of sure what kind of money is behind it all. I obviously wish it the best and hope it is what the doctor ordered, and maybe it might even grow their brand like they intend for it to, as far as the nostalgia is concerned. But just kind of skeptical about it now. Kind of don't know what is going to come about with it, given its company history.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta agree with you, Brandon. I don't know. I mean, the nostalgia part, that's a big thing. And I was talking with a bunch of other people that cover the sport in a group chat I'm in. And basically it was like that sense of nostalgia is back. I don't know. I mean, it's obviously under new ownership. Obviously Sears owned it previously, and then 2008, they kind of got out when Sears basically, I think that was when they really kind of filed for bankruptcy, and it kind of really started to go downhill a little bit, as well as really everything else with the economy. Excuse me. So I don't know what to think of this. I like it, but we'll just have to see how it goes. From what I've heard, the Truck Series is going to look a lot different next year if a certain few things happen from people I've talked to in the garage area.
Okay, so just to follow up on that real quick, I mean, obviously, if it's all classified, I don't want to, make you break any oaths here or anything like that. But are we talking like rule changes, like the caution clock that came in for just the season, or is this
not talking about
business stuff?
It goes back. Right now, a lot of those rides are, we're still, obviously Zane Smith's going to be back. That was obviously previously announced, and good to see him, and the details that with him and for the contract that he has until 2026. He kind of he told me that back at Mid Ohio, so when I was at Mid Ohio covering the truck race. So that's ride set in stone. There's a couple others that I think are there, but Matt DiBenedetto obviously will be back. I don't expect any changes at ThorSport. The rest of the grid, I don't know. It's there's still a lot of people that are open. Again, this Kyle Busch thing needs to get figured out, and then I think you'll see a lot of people into place. Also, Grant Enfinger does have a multi-year contract, I do believe, with GMS.
Yeah, well, of course, the Kyle Busch contract is probably the largest domino, but still has to fall. And once that falls, it's going to trigger a lot of other deals, I'm sure. So certainly something to keep our eyes on there. Casey and Brandon, you guys bring up a good point as well with, Sears and everything and the change in ownership. And, I know that obviously the economy, really tanked in 2008. We were in a global recession and financial crisis and everything. And, Kmart and Sears and that whole division, I feel like really never got back to where they were in the 90s and being the great retail giants that they once were. I think back to, just before, the pandemic hit, the final couple of Kmart stores around me shutting down and closing their doors. So, it is something that I think you have to factor in here of this new ownership. I remember seeing the promo that they put out, and, there was so much nostalgia in that alone. It was a really, really good promo that NASCAR and Craftsman ended up putting together for the Truck Series next year. But I'm with you guys. I think, it's way, way too early. This was just announced. Let's give it a year or two and see where this partnership goes. And, then we'll go ahead and judge it from there. But hopefully, keep your fingers crossed. Craftsman's here to stay for at least a good solid, half decade or decade or so. And, we'll see where the sport is in that time. I'm sure there's many, many big changes coming to the sport in the next decade. So it's going to be very hard to predict. It's hard to believe Camping World has already been around for as long as they have with Marcus and the money that he's poured in. And of course, we're thankful for that, but all good things must come to an end. And I guess if I'm doing the math right here in my head, it was 14 years for Craftsman, 95 to 08, and then 09 to 22 would be 14 years as well. So maybe there's some sort of pattern there. Maybe we'll see Craftsman back in for 14 years, and then Marcus can bring Camping World back in whatever would be 2037 or something like that. So who knows what's going to happen in the future Truck Series.
I just want to thank YouTuber Company Man for all my knowledge of Sears and Kmart.
I love Company Man. Everyone
Yes.
he comes out with that stuff. It's awesome. You're always welcome to come on here if you want to talk companies, Company Man. So
yeah, I'll give an endorsement of Company Man as well. I really enjoy the videos and the content that he puts out. I've learned a lot from them. Well, Casey, thank you so much for joining us once again. It's great to have you on the show. And before we go, I'll give you the chance to, before we let you go, I should say, Brandon and I still have an Xfinity race to cover. What is your one shining moment from anything you saw in the world of motorsports this weekend?
I have my one shining moment is to Brad Smith. 400 starts in the ARCA Menard series. We all love Brad Smith. We all love him seeing out there. I got a chance to talk with him a couple times. He made his 400 start this weekend, Milwaukee Mile, going back all the way back to 1988 at Rockford Speedway in Illinois. And 400 start just right up the road at Milwaukee Mile. Obviously, he goes out every race, doesn't have the money, doesn't have the equipment. But he just goes out and races, and that's because that's what he does. Has a good time doing it. Got a second top 10 at Berlin earlier this year. And it's so my one shining moment is to Brad Smith. We all love Brad Smith.
He just gets out there and rides.
Yeah, he does.
Absolutely. And, if all you look at is the box scores, you may see Brad Smith as, a little more than a footnote, but that could not be further from the truth. Brad is somebody who represents what ARCA is all about. And, I still remember him picking up that top 10 at, I believe it was Winchester, right, in 2020, when he finally got that after, 300 some odd starts and getting another one this year. It has been a long time coming for him. He has been in the sport for a long time, and he deserves to have those moments of success, and hopefully he sticks around, and maybe we can even find some ways to give him a little bit better equipment so that he can start running a little bit quicker as well as his career continues on here. But Casey, I completely agree with you. Great to see that moment for him this weekend, and here's to a handful more. However long Brad continues to do it, the ARCA Series will be lucky to have him.
Here's to you, Brad.
All right. Well, Casey, thanks again. Of course, you're welcome anytime, and hopefully we'll see you throughout the rest of the season here as the ARCA Series continues and winds down, but we'll let you get on with the rest of your night. Thanks again.
Next Monday, it's Encore night. I'll be back to talk to Coin if you guys want me around.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. We love having you.
All right. See you guys.
All right. Have a good one.
See you.
Yep.
All right, Brandon. Well, we've got a wild Xfinity Series race to cover here. Multiple overtime finishes, most of the front runners taken out. If there's a silver lining for that, though, if you're a fan of small teams, you're going to like what this looks like. Jeremy Clements took his second career victory and led what is probably one of the most unlikely top 10s you're ever going to see in NASCAR, leading the way and taking a win for his family-owned operation ahead of MBM Motorsports driver, the 2011 Xfinity Series Rookie of the Year, if I recall correctly, Timmy Hill. Long time coming for him to get a podium finish, and a great run for him as well. Other notable great runs: Brandon Brown, the Talladega winner from last year in P4, Sage Karam 5th, Ryan Vargas 6th, Alex LeBay 8th, Hill's MBM teammate, veteran driver J.J. Yaley 9th, Kyle Sieg 10th, and we'll flip over here. Look at who's 11th, Jesse Iwuji. A great run for him in what has been a difficult season for him otherwise, but great to see him get so close to a top 10 finish as well. But Brandon, before we get to the overtime discussion, I want to get your thoughts on Clements and his victory and all these drivers that you see here that we don't normally get to talk about in or just outside of a top 10.
Yeah, that's one of the great things. One of the silver linings really about super speedway racing is that you get these very not normal wins. And Jeremy Clements, definitely a great story, second career win for him, and all these other ones as well. It's great to see them finish in the top 10, albeit out of attrition, really, just avoiding all these wrecks towards the end. But I'm still with you. It's not really the kind of racing we like to see. But it's nice to see these guys that don't always have time up front have a finish that they can put on their stat sheet.
Well, you bring up a good point as well. We don't like seeing the massive accidents that lead to the attrition that we have to be, honest and, not hide things here. That. Oh, sorry. It looks like we lost my camera for a second. Hopefully we're back. Going back to what I was saying earlier, we have to be honest, and it does help these small teams, when the big teams fall out with the accidents, and give them a path forward to make it a little bit easier for them to come through and score unlikely victories, unlikely top fives, and unlikely top tens. But that is a silver lining, especially if you're a fan of the underdog teams, to see them run that well. But at the same time, the big teams largely had a night to forget. Like we mentioned, the race had 3 attempts at NASCAR overtime. It was extended 18 laps, which in effect turned the Wawa 250 into the Wawa 295. That's just 2 laps and 5 miles shorter than the season opening 300-mile race, by the way, which ran to its scheduled distance. And of course, had the big accident on the final lap with Myatt Snyder going into the catch fence. So Brandon, people don't need to know how I feel about overtime, generally speaking, but even if you're a fan of trying to get a green flag finish, can we still acknowledge maybe it's time to reconsider having multiple unlimited overtime attempts on these super speedways?
At least at the super speedways. I don't care what your inclination is on this subject. When it comes to super speedway racing, there needs to be a limit to all this carnage. I mean, you get your green flag finish, great, but we need to have some limit here, and then actually have a scheduled distance for these super speedway races. There's a reason why. I mean, these are professionals. Don't get me wrong; they're great at what they do here, but they're fighting for that. They're fighting for the win, and also in the Cup Series, they're fighting for the season finale, and or the regular season finale or whatever. And the stakes are way too high, and it's way too dangerous to have these kinds of finishes, and just kind of tired of talking about it, honestly. We see the same thing happen every time. Even iRacing has a 2-time limit of a green, white, checkered finish, and then that's it. They don't let you go further than that.
Well, and Brandon, you bring up the point as well about wanting to get a green flag finish. We didn't even get that. We had Riley Herbst, I believe it was, spitting out, and there was some conspiracy theories swirling on Twitter that maybe NASCAR held the yellow until they were sure Clemens crossed the stripe to take the white flag, because they said, this is getting ridiculous. If we have to do this for a 4th time, we're going to be here till 2 a.m. It doesn't even work half the time. I mean, if the whole point is to, get a green flag finish, and I guess, ARCA takes that extra step, and, even if you take the white, you have to finish under green. We saw that in the All-Star race this year. Obviously, that was very controversial with Ryan Blaney thinking he'd won and taking his window net down. It's not even just the idea that, the race name should mean something. It should not be this arbitrary number. You're trying to get a green flag finish, and even with multiple attempts, you're not even achieving your goal here, because the race ends under caution anyway. If you're going to get a race that ends under caution anyway, why not just end the Wawa 250 after 250 miles? If you're going to die on this hill, if you're going to change the name from green, white, checker to overtime, despite the fact that racing's not a time sport, if you're going to, die on this hill so much,
what does it matter?
And why do you have numbers in the race name still?
Call it the Wawa.
Call the Wawa Summer Race at Daytona, the Wawa Clash at Daytona, the Wawa Xfinity Race, or something like that.
And it's done whenever we say it's done.
Yes. It doesn't. The number means nothing. You have to know that with the nature of super speedway racing these days, you are practically guaranteed to go beyond that 250 that you put in the race name.
And they know it. They're not stupid.
When you have numbers, and it's not even numbers. When you name something, there should be a meaning behind it, I believe. And the 24 hours of Daytona, why not? Let's tack on an extra 18 minutes if we happen to be under a safety car period. Let's make sure the fans that waited an entire day get their green flag finish. The Indy 500, forget red flagging it. Let's just run caution laps so that we can get back to green quicker. And who cares if it becomes the Indianapolis 515? At least we got our green flag finish for the fans and had our 2-lap shootout that way. I mean, the numbers mean something. The race name should mean something. I don't want to go too deep into this discussion again, but particularly on the super speedways, when you have multiple attempts, at the bare minimum, when this was first introduced, I still remember the infamous truck race at Gateway, I think actually did go into 4 green, white, checkered periods of 4 overtime attempts. And when it was brought into the Cup Series mid-season, Jimmy Johnson went on record and said, I want to applaud NASCAR for limiting this to 1 attempt and making sure we don't get, a fiasco like we had in the Truck Series at St. Louis. And here we are now, almost 2 decades later. They've doubled down on overtime so many times over that we're here with multiple attempts, unlimited attempts in all 3 of the top series. And it doesn't change when we go to super speedways, when we're prone to, massive accidents like this that need to bring a caution out and extend the race. And it just happens over and over and over again. And if we're being honest, if that crash that happened in the 3rd overtime happened any other race, the caution probably would have come out a little bit quicker. Maybe we would have had a 4th overtime. I don't blame NASCAR for, not getting on the caution that quickly. I think everybody wanted to go home. If there was a long rain delay, it was 1:30 in the morning or whenever it was. I get all of that, but I don't understand why we continue to do this. And Justin Marks, Brandon, we were talking on the wrap-up show yesterday. I don't know if you caught this, but he sent a tweet out based on what happened during the Cup race. There were $4 million worth of torn up race cars sitting in Daytona. I know the budgets for the Xfinity Series aren't that high, but it cannot be good for these teams, regardless of whether it's a big team or not. The race purses are a fraction of what they are in the Cup Series when you get down to the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series, which will be racing in Talladega later this year as well. What are we gaining from this? We're not even getting our green flag finish, which is the intended goal. So when you try something that does not get you your intended goal, I don't understand what the point is.
Yeah, and like they NASCAR themselves recognize this problem, and instead of actually fixing it the right way, they want to throw a little Band-Aid on it and call it a fix. It's exhausting to keep talking about this being an issue. I can see where you're coming from if you don't want this if you would like it to be at some races on the calendar, but not super speedways.
Yeah, and listen,
in the discussion.
If you're going to die on the hill, if you got to have it, you got to limit it to 1 attempt on the super speedways. There's no reason to continue to drag this out and have multiple attempts, keep tearing up more cars, and repeat the process from the start. And who knows when you get, and like I said, you don't even get your green flag finish. I mean, it's just ridiculous here. Casey joining the chat here. Good to see you sticking around, Casey. Should we do a 1-lap shootout at Daytona and Talladega in NASCAR like ARCA does? That's a good question. I would say just end the race under caution. I think people know where I stand, but that might be a good alternative. The only problem that I have with the way ARCA does it is that it does take almost a full lap to get up to full speed. And, that gives the leader a major advantage in my mind because, when you're getting up to full speed, it's harder to get a run on somebody. Maybe it would race differently with a Cup or Xfinity package, but Brandon, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that'd be a good idea. I'm not sure.
I've got to say personally, I'm not really a fan of how ARCA does it either because I don't feel like you have enough time to get going. But I'm open to trying it. I mean, if we're going to limit it to 1 attempt there and have that be the attempt and be the procedure, that's certainly better than what we have now with unlimited attempts here.
At least wreck a bunch of cars once instead of 4 or 5 times before you get your green finish.
Yeah, and bringing up a race that I think is going to bring up some painful memories for Dale Jr. fans here, 2015 Talladega vibes with 1 attempt. And, then you have the confusion there because they wrecked before they got to the start-finish line, kind of on both attempts there. So which is an attempt, which isn't an attempt, and how do you rule that? I mean, that was a whole fiasco that we had. I think we're probably better off not revisiting that either. So let's just go into
end races under caution.
Yes.
Just bring it back to the source.
Completely agree.
But can't do that anymore. We've gone too far.
Yep. Well, let's turn it around and talk about something positive here, Brandon. Let's end the show right. What is your one shining moment from this motorsports weekend?
It was on the tip of my tongue, and I've seemed to forget. I'm just going to go ahead and move on. My one shining moment is that we're going back to Darlington next weekend. And it's a shining moment for the future.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot to be thankful for in the sport right now. And, I think moving forward, despite the flaws that we continue to talk about here, I think there's some positive momentum working all throughout the sport. My one shining moment, Casey took mine, but I'm going to use it anyway. give a call to Brad Smith. A true ARCA veteran and somebody that I know, can, have his detractors with, how slow he may be on the track sometimes, but we have to remember that he is on a fraction of the budget that guys like Sammy Smith and Taylor Gray and the, top teams, the Venturinis of the world are running on. It's great to see him continue to be out here doing what he loves. And like we said, hopefully he sticks around for, as long as he can run it, minimum speed and be out there, grinding away and doing what he loves. It's great to see him still in the garage plugging away, and to hit 400 starts in the series is absolutely incredible and a testament to his longevity as well. So that is an excellent one shining moment from Casey. I'm going to make it mine as well and give it to Brad Smith. And with that, we're going to wrap up the Encore show for this week. Thank you all so much for watching as always. And be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network here on YouTube if you're not already. Follow us on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We stream on Twitch and LinkedIn as well. I believe Joe's even set that up. So pretty much anything you can think of, we're there. Go ahead and find us and follow us. If you really liked what you saw tonight, you can take 5 minutes after our show to invest in the Grid Network through our Patreon. Help keep us on the air throughout 2022. And as always, thank you to Colin, Deshelle, Mark, and Robin, who have already done so. If you'd rather make a one-time donation, you can buy me a coffee. Follow the link in the description box below to that. You can buy a coffee for your favorite honor or talent. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet. And thank you to Edward, Amber, and Zachary for doing so. Finally, visit our sponsor, Public.com, the stock market social media home. The referral code you see on the screen below and in the description, GRIDnet, will get you $5 to invest. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends. You can make new friends and use tools to learn how to invest in the stock market. Now, be sure you keep an eye on the Grid schedule this week. It's going to be a little bit different. Wednesday, Kobe will host Grid Tonight with Adam like normal. The Women in Motorsports Thursday program is somewhat up in the air right now because Grid Network's own Joe Samniego will be back on site at Portland covering the IndyCar Series action there, as well as the ARCA Menard Series West, which we, of course, will recap here on the Encore show, and some other support races there as well. So stay tuned for some special Grid Live coverage this weekend as we prepare for what is, in effect, Grid Network's home race. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off for the night?
Yeah, I decided I shouldn't be such a sourpuss on the one shining moment. I'll be a little bit nicer here. I think it's cool that Lemonis is giving salary and benefits to Camping World. They deserve that after all this time. And it is nice to see Craftsman step up back to the Truck Series. Wish them the best and hope it really explodes not only the Truck Series, but also their brand in sort of a revival sense.
Well, that is a good place to end on, I think. So for Casey Campbell, Joshua Burch, and Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful rest of your week.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, Public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on Public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on Public.com.